Beneath the twin suns of Valora, their light cast an array of vivid colors across the alien landscape. Kyle, the human explorer, wandered deeper into the heart of this foreign world, driven by both his relentless curiosity and a sense of adventure. He'd heard stories of the hidden royal oasis, an ethereal sanctuary said to be a haven for mystical beings and otherworldly escape from the trials of space travel. "Let's hope it's not guarded by shape-shifting creatures," he joked under his breath, the thrill of discovery pushing him forward. As he moved past towering blossoms, their rich fragrances wrapped around him, soothing yet invigorating, like a warm, invisible hug. Suddenly, Kale stumbled upon an archway of shimmering vines, softly pulsating with energy. He hesitated, peering through it, his breath catching in his throat. Before him stood something straight out of legend, an alien princess. Her name Leora. Her translucent skin glistened like polished gems, reflecting the colors of the lush garden, and her hair flowed like a silver waterfall. She moved with an elegance that seemed effortless, and yet the strength beneath her gentle demeanor was undeniable. Kale and Leora's eyes met, locking in an instant of shared recognition, something strange, yet familiar. Leora, sensing his presence, turned gracefully, her curiosity piqued. "What brings a human so deep into the sacred gardens?" she asked, her voice melodious and rich with intrigue. Kale, attempting to maintain composure, cleared his throat. "I was just exploring," he said, his excitement barely concealed. "I heard stories of this incredible place, and I guess I got lucky." He hesitated before adding, "But I didn't expect to find someone so." Captivating, Leora's lips curved into a small, amused smile. "Flattery is quite an effective strategy, human," she teased. "But I should warn you, this place is protected from curious wanderers." "Ah, so you like your explorers to be a bit more subtle," Kale replied, his grin widening. "I can tone it down. How about a less charming, more awkward approach?" Leora laughed, a sound like a soft, flowing stream. "No, I think the charm suits you," she replied, her mischievous eyes sparkling. Their banter flowed easily, as if they'd known each other for far longer than a few minutes. As the day wore on, they exchanged stories. Kale recounted his adventures from Earth, wild animals, unpredictable weather, and the mischief he always seemed to stumble into. Leora, in return, shared tales of her planet, of floating beasts and flora that sang harmonies at dusk. Despite their vastly different worlds, their connection grew stronger with each word, every glance charged with the spark of something new and unspoken. As the suns began to set, casting Valora in a glowing palette of purples and golds, Kale and Leora sat amidst the blossoms, the air around them humming with possibilities. Leora confessed her desire for freedom from the burdens of royalty, while Kale revealed his own search for meaning beyond mere survival in the vastness of space. Their shared vulnerability deepened the bond between them. The next day, with a sense of adventure dancing in her eyes, Leora invited Kale to visit the royal citadel, where they could explore further, undisturbed by the royal guards who constantly watched her movements. "Ready for a royal escapade?" she asked playfully, meeting him at the garden's entrance. Kale bowed dramatically. "Lead the way, Your Highness," he said, laughter bubbling up between them as they set off through the winding paths of the citadel. The grandeur of the palace amazed Kale, its walls adorned with luminous stones that sparkled like stars, creating the illusion of a sky within the very halls. As they ventured deeper, they found the Hall of Reflections, where light danced across endless mirrors, creating shifting, enchanting patterns. Leora posed in front of one, her posture regal and poised. "Dignity is everything," she said with mock seriousness. Kale, grinning, mimicked her exaggeratedly. "Clearly I'm born for this," he replied, earning another round of laughter from the princess. Their carefree exploration was interrupted when Leora's guards appeared, surprised by the antics unfolding before them. "What's going on here?" one of the guards demanded, suspicious of the human visitor. Leora waved a hand dismissively. "Cultural exchange," she said, her tone light and playful. The tension lifted, and even the guards couldn't help but smile as Kale struck another ridiculous pose. Later, as dusk fell, they found themselves at the edge of an enchanted grotto, rumored to be a place of ancient power. As they walked, Kale collected stones, each one with a story or a wish attached to it. "This one's a wish stone," he said, holding up a glittering blue gem. "It grants your heart's desire." "And how do you know that?" Leora asked, her tone filled with amused skepticism. "I don't," Kale admitted with a grin. "But it sounds good." Right, their laughter echoed into the night as they lay beneath the glowing flora, the air between them thick with unspoken emotions. In that quiet, star-lit moment, the line between curiosity and something deeper blurred, and Kale realized how much he was drawn to her, this alien princess, who had become more than just a passing fascination. In the days that followed, they grew inseparable, their adventures weaving a new tapestry of shared experiences. They traveled across Valora, explored the royal grounds, and found joy in the simplest of moments, building something powerful and lasting. It wasn't long before they realized that what had begun as a playful connection had grown into a bond that would reshape their lives and perhaps even the fate of their worlds. As Leora's coronation as Queen of Valora approached, Kale stood by her side, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would break the traditions that had once confined them, forging a new future where love, freedom, and adventure reigned supreme. As Leora's coronation approached, the atmosphere in the royal citadel grew more tense. The grand event, meant to solidify her place as Queen of Valora, loomed over her like a burden. Even with Kale by her side, the weight of tradition was hard to escape. She would soon face suitors, politicians, and noble families, all with their own agendas, and none that aligned with her desire for freedom. A few days before the coronation, Leora took Kale to a place she had never shown anyone before, the hidden cave of Valora, a sanctuary of personal significance to her. Tucked behind a cascading waterfall in the northern cliffs, it was a secluded place where the weight of her responsibilities couldn't reach her. Inside, the walls were covered in glowing crystals, casting a soft, calming light across the cave's vast interior. A small pool of water shimmered at the center, fed by the waterfall outside. "This is where I come when I need to think," Leora said softly, leading him inside. "When I was younger, before the weight of the crown felt so heavy, this was my refuge." Kale marveled at the beauty of the space, but his eyes returned to her, realizing the significance of her bringing him here. "You've never shown anyone this place." "Have you?" Leora shook her head. "Not even my family. It's the only place that feels like mine." Kale knelt by the pool, running his fingers through the cool water. "You know, back on Earth, I had a place like this. A hidden cove by the sea. Whenever life got overwhelming, I'd go there to clear my mind." Leora smiled faintly. "It's strange, isn't it? We're from such different worlds, yet we both sought the same kind of escape." They sat in silence for a moment, the sound of the waterfall filling the space around them. Kale turned to her, his expression serious. "What happens after the coronation, Leora? Do you really want to be tied to a throne?" She sighed, her gaze fixed on the shimmering water. "I don't know. Part of me wants to run away, to leave all of this behind and explore the stars. But my people need me. My family. They expect me to be the leader Valora deserves." Kale reached out, taking her hand. "You don't have to choose between your duty and your happiness. There has to be a way to do both." Leora met his gaze, the connection between them more powerful than ever. "I wish it were that simple." The day of the coronation arrived. The royal citadel was transformed into a dazzling spectacle, with banners, flowers, and shimmering lights decorating every surface. The grand hall was filled with dignitaries from across Valora and beyond, all there to witness Leora's ascension to the throne. Kale watched from the crowd, dressed in formal attire that felt strangely out of place on him. He spotted Leora, standing tall and regal, though he could see the tension in her shoulders. Her dress sparkled like the stars, a reflection of the royal jewels that adorned her. As the ceremony progressed, Leora's thoughts drifted to Kale, their recent adventures, and the freedom she craved. Her heart pounded as she neared the final part of the ritual, where she was to declare her loyalty to Valora and its people. But when the time came, Leora hesitated. "My people," she began, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions inside her. "I stand before you today, not just as your future queen, but as someone who seeks to honor the legacy of Valora in a new way. I vow to lead with compassion, innovation, and love not just for my people, but for those beyond our world." A ripple of murmurs spread through the hall, but Leora continued, her voice growing stronger. "I will not be bound by the traditions that no longer serve us. I choose to lead from the heart, and I choose to be with someone who challenges me to be better, someone who sees beyond the crown." Kale's heart raced as her eyes found his in the crowd. He could hardly believe what he was hearing. The tension in the room thickened, and for a moment, the entire hall held its breath. "I choose to forge my own path," Leora declared, "one that balances my duty to my people with my right to happiness. And I will not be bound by the chains of expectation." A stunned silence followed her proclamation, the room full of dignitaries frozen in disbelief. But then, slowly, a few claps echoed through the hall. One by one, others began to follow, until the entire chamber was filled with applause, though some faces remained stiff with shock. Kale, unable to contain himself, made his way to the front of the hall, moving through the crowd until he reached her side. Leora turned to him, her expression softening. "Well, that was quite the speech," Kale said, his voice low but filled with pride. Leora smiled, her heart racing with the thrill of defiance. "I meant every word." Not everyone in Valora accepted Leora's declaration of independence from tradition. In the days following the coronation, whispers of rebellion began to spread. Some of the older noble families, those deeply entrenched in Valora's rigid customs, plotted to remove Leora from the throne, believing her progressive ideas would weaken the kingdom. Kale and Leora learned of the conspiracy from one of her trusted advisors, a former royal guard named Thalos. He met with them in secret, hidden deep within the palace's underground tunnels. "Your Highness," Thalos said, his voice barely above a whisper, "the council is divided. Some of the more traditional members are planning to challenge your rule. They're gathering support from other factions within the kingdom." Leora's heart sank. "So it's begun." Kale clenched his fists. "We can't let them overthrow you. You've already proven that you're the leader Valora needs." Thalos nodded. "There are still many who support you, but you need to act quickly. We must prepare for a formal challenge." Leora squared her shoulders, her resolve hardening. "I won't let them take my kingdom. If they want to fight, I'll give them one." Kale stood beside her, ready to fight for her and the future they had begun to build together. "Whatever happens, we face it together." The tension within Valora reached a boiling point when a faction of rebels, led by a powerful noble named Darren, launched a surprise attack on the royal citadel. Leora and Kale, along with their loyal supporters, were forced to defend the palace from within its walls. Kale, though inexperienced in battle, stood at Leora's side, armed and ready. He had never imagined he'd be fighting to protect a kingdom, let alone one on an alien world, but he knew he couldn't let her down. The battle was fierce. with the rebels attempting to storm the palace gates. Leora, despite her royal upbringing, fought with courage and skill, leading her people with both strength and compassion. Her leadership inspired those around her. And even some of the rebels began to question their loyalty to Darren. In the final moments of the battle, Cale faced off against Darren himself. The two clashed in the Grand Hall, their fight a whirlwind of steel and raw emotion. Darren, enraged by Leora's progressive ideals, fought with ruthless determination, but Cale's resolve, fueled by his love for Leora, proved stronger. With a final, decisive strike, Cale disarmed Darren, sending his sword clattering to the floor. The rebellion was over. In the aftermath of the battle, Leora's rule was solidified. The people of Valora, inspired by her strength and compassion, rallied behind her vision for the future. She introduced reforms that balanced tradition with progress, ensuring that Valora would remain strong and united, while also embracing new ideas and alliances beyond their world. Cale, now recognized not just as Leora's companion but as a hero in his own right, continued to explore Valora by her side. Together they led the kingdom into a new era, one defined by love, freedom, and the unbreakable bond they had forged. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. For every comment that says we will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.